Yo, what's up everyone, it's Ole here and welcome to a new video on the channel. Today, I'm gonna show you my little project right here I have in my backyard, which is my 1988 Volvo 244 GL, which is now going into a 240 turbo. It's a long build, it's been a big project. So I'm gonna walk you through the project right now, what we have done on the car outside. I'm also gonna check out my engine that I'm building for this car, because it's gonna be quite the piece. You know what I mean? Quite the piece, the puzzle, the cherry on top, you know what I mean? It's gonna be a really fun car, really fun project, and I'm also building it outside during Swedish winter, which is, yeah, it's not the most optimal situation, but if I want to get shit done, I need to get shit done, and I can't sit here and wait until the perfect scenario. So, yeah, let's show you guys this. It's kinda like sitting in a snow pile right now. Yeah, so right now, I did engine swap it out yesterday, so there's an engine in here right now. So this is the engine out of my 940 winter beater, which I made a couple of videos on the channel with already. So this is the engine out of that car. It's a 450,000 kilometer turbo engine, still runs good. I've been running it with 1 bar of boost without tuned ECU. And you might be wondering why I'm putting this engine in here, the 450,000 kilometer winter beater engine, instead of my built forced turbo engine. And the reason I'm doing that is because this engine right here is the same engine but in a stock form, and I know that this thing worked. When I pulled it out of the 940, this thing ran fine. So when I'm doing all the wiring and stuff, I want to eliminate the engine being a problem, so I know that the engine works and all the connectors and everything on the engine is fine. So I can do the wiring, and once I know the wiring works and this engine runs, I can take this engine out and put my forged engine in there, because I've rebuilt the entire engine and I think it's gonna work, but you never know if there's a small problem or something like that. So when I'm doing the wiring myself, I want to make sure I do it on an engine that I know 110% works, so I can take it out and then swap in the turbo engine. Well, this is also a turbo engine. This is the light pressure turbo engine, the 135 horsepower one, which is the same I've built mine on. And also there's another idea behind having this stock engine in here to begin with, is to be able to inspect the car, get it registered with this engine, so I can drive it on the street legally. It doesn't really matter for me because I can still drive it. You just get some insurance on there and it kinda works, but just avoid getting an accident, I guess. But it's kind of nice to have it registered and inspected and stuff like that. So there's an idea as well, is getting it registered with the stock engine, and then we throw the big turbo forced engine in here. We'll see what I do. Currently trying to get the car working. So basically we got this engine here, and also rate my nice little alternator mount. This thing kept breaking the screw on this, so we just used a ratchet strap. It works fine. If it works, it works. This is the Volvo fashion right here. If it works, it works. So yeah, so currently the engine is in there. We're gonna need to mount the gearbox, and then mount the intercooler and radiator and all that kind of stuff, and then this thing should work. I of course need to do the wiring and also fix up the fuel system a little bit, and also get the hydraulic clutch setup done, because this gearbox is hydraulic clutch. The old one, the M47, has the wire clutch, so we need to do some stuff with that. But just taking everything from a 940 and putting it in here, and then we can check out the interior. Not that much in the interior right now. Let's see if I can just... Whoop. Oh fuck. So right here, in here is a mess right now, because yeah, it's just keeping some parts here. So we got this stock intercooler, got the stock seat, stock steering wheel. So the plan is to have a bucket seat with a hydro handbrakes, another steering wheel. I think I'm actually putting the interior back in. I ripped all the interior out of this car, but now, like, I think I'm putting it back into the car, because I don't know, I want this to be a street car, so I can drive it on the street and have some fun, and not be a race car. The idea was turn it into a race car, like a drift car or something, but I actually like the idea of this thing just being a sleeper, fun street car I could take out and just drive and just go to meets and stuff like that, instead of it being a door banger or something like that. It's gonna be a drift car, but I like it too much. Still gonna drift the streets and stuff, but I don't want to go do tandems with it and compete with this car. So the idea is probably to just take my 940 winter beater and turn that into like a drift car where I can actually go and compete, do some tandems and stuff like that, and then have this as my like street car, just drive around town, going on road trips and having fun. Drifting the streets, of course, doing burnouts, but not like going to a competition and stuff like that. So it's gonna be a fun project. It's not the most optimal condition to build this car, But if I get shit done, I need to get shit done, and I can't sit here and wait for a perfect condition. And I actually think it will be a pretty cool thing for YouTube, because not everyone is building a car outside during winter, but not everyone can have this crazy workshop that all the YouTubers have. So I think it can be pretty relatable and maybe inspire some of you to go out and build your own cars in your backyard if you have the ability to do so, because I don't know, because it works. Like, it works. I've been doing engine swaps right here. I actually rebuilt a 940 turbo last summer right here. It wasn't winter, it was summer, but like I did an engine swap, I did the brakes, and I did a lot of stuff like that. So yeah, you can definitely do a lot of stuff outside as long as you have the right tools. You can get shit done. So yeah, hopefully I can get a garage next winter, but right now this is how it works, and it will be pretty funny. So yeah, this is how it works. So let's go check out my engine and see what's done to that, because I've done most of the work to the engine and not to this car yet, because yeah, prioritizing the engine. So let's go check out the engine and see what is done to that thing. So here we have the engine, which is a B230FK with a big turbo right here. Gonna go into what it's done with the engine and what we're gonna be doing with the engine before we're putting it in the car. I just want to show you guys, this is the garage I'm building it in. It's yeah, it's a part of my basement. And just two lights right here to keep it lit, and then we got this oil tank which is not used anymore, but it's just sitting here empty, and we got the water pump and all that kind of stuff over there. So it's just a corner in the basement, but it works to build a high horsepower engine. But now moving on to the engine, which is a B230FK out of a Volvo 940. This engine has gone 180,000 kilometers to begin with. So pretty much nothing in Volvo standards. These cars usually run 300 to 400,000 kilometers without any problems. So basically, for the configuration of the bottom end, it's really simple. It is stock crankshaft, stock turbo pistons, and H-beam rods with ARP 2000 bolts. That's it. It's pretty much stock. Of course, we got the new bearings in there, we got the new seals, got new piston rings that are gapped to 0.7 and 0.75, and the oil ring is left untouched. But that is pretty much it for the bottom end. It's super simple. Of course, the FK block with the oil-cooled pistons, but that is pretty much it. So you might think it sounds crazy to run 500 horsepower on pretty much stock internals, but these engines right here, the Volvo red block platform, the B230 in particular, it is well overbuilt. These engines are so overbuilt. It's like a American V8 back in the days, where you can take any V8 or like the power glide transmissions and stuff like that from back in the 60s, and they can handle like 700 horsepower unopened, some even 1,000 horsepower without any forced internals. And this is pretty much the same thing, but in a smaller form. No, but basically the pistons, I think they're supposed to be able to handle 500 to 600 horsepower, because they are MAHLE turbo pistons, so they're really good brand, they're good quality, and they can handle good power as well. And the crankshaft, I think, is known to handle up to 1,000 horsepower. It's not bad stuff that these engines are made of. The only weak part about the bottom end in the B230 FK platform, from what I understand, is the rods. The rods are really weak. They usually give up after like 300 horsepower. So that's why we upgraded them to H-beam rods, and of course got the ARP 2000 bolts on there to hold them together. And of course you change the bearings and piston rings and gaskets and all that stuff to make sure it's all fresh and clean. And of course the pistons are only gone 180,000 kilometers, and same goes for the crank. We'll see, I guess it's up to test. I'm gonna drive this engine. This car is built to driven, it's not built to just cruise around town. This is built to actually beat the shit out of this car. So we'll see if this actually is true. I've never built an engine like this before, but from what I understand, this is a really good concept. A lot of people run this with 500 wheel horsepower in Volvos all around Sweden, so I thought it will work for me as well. Of course, forced pistons would be better, but of course that is another 1,000 euros to the budget. So just stick with the stock pistons and see how far we can get with those. And then for the head, as I said, it's a Volvo 531 head. So this head usually came in the automatic cars, because the automatic transmission loses a little bit more power to the wheels than a manual car. So to make sure that the automatic cars still made the same power to the wheels as the manual ones, they made a better head that flowed a little bit better combustion chambers, and a more aggressive camshaft. And this head is really good. Some guys make 500 wheel horsepower with the stock valves and stock porting. All they do is change the camshaft, which is insane for a head that is built for 130 horsepower. So we got the 531 head. I've opened up the ports a little bit, done some match porting, nothing too crazy, just a little bit to make sure it flows a little bit better. We got a new camshaft in here. This is the KLR T3 camshaft with 280 degrees of duration and 12.15 millimeters in lift. I think that's correct. I will put it up here on the screen if it's not. But it's a KLR T3 camshaft, ported 531 head, and then stock valves, stock combustion chambers. I have not touched the combustion chambers at all. And then got the valve spring upgrade, so we have stronger valve springs in here, double valve springs to be exact. So this is a really simple concept as well. Hopefully it will work really good as well. This is also a common concept. The entire engine here is like the basic red block tuning concept. This is like the normal recipe to make 500 wheel horsepower. Is the forged rods, 531 head, and the T3 camshaft. Basic, but it should work and get the job done. Yeah, we'll see how far we can get with this. And of course, we're gonna get some head studs in here. I want to get ARP head studs, but I think I will end up with the 12.9 because money problems. And then for the turbo, which is probably the most exciting part for you guys, this is a K27 turbo out of a Mercedes diesel truck. This turbo comes stock in the Mercedes OM609 turbo diesel truck engines. And I think they make like 300 horsepower and 1200 newton meters of torque. And the previous owner I bought this from, because I bought this turbo used, he ran it in his 240 and he made 504 horsepower on E85. So I will be running this car on E85. It will be stupid to run this on pump gas, because if you want to make a lot of power, and of course with an engine like this, a 2.3 liter 8 valve engine, you will be needing a lot of boost. So we'll be running over 2 bars of boost in this engine, and that's also, since this is a pretty small engine, it's a big 4-cylinder, it's a 2.3 liter, but it's a small engine in the big spectrum. It's not a 6-cylinder, an 8-cylinder, or anything like that, and it's an 8 valve head as well, so we definitely need to use a lot of boost, and that is why I've used so big piston gaps. I got to 0.7 and 0.75 in piston ring gap, is because I want to be able to run over 2 bars of boost. And that's also why I've gone with this diesel turbo. It was cheap on Facebook Marketplace, but it's also nice to have a diesel truck turbo, because the diesel trucks are known to make a lot more boost, and if this is good to be on a diesel truck, it's good to be in the B230. I wanted a turbo that can handle a lot of boost, to be able to make 2 to 2.5 bars of boost. That's one of the reasons why I gone with this turbo, and also because it was really cheap for what it was. I also have this homemade T3 twin entry exhaust manifold with the 60mm wastegate. This is built to fit in the Volvo 240, so hopefully that is true. It looks like it should fit. It's a bottom mount as well, so the turbo will be right here instead of up here. So yeah, it's gonna be a really nice setup, and definitely be able to make 500 horsepower in the setup. Hopefully at least 400 wheel horsepower, which means we can have 500 on the crank. So if it doesn't turn out to be 500 wheel, well, it can at least say it has 500 crank horsepower. But I'm sure we can get 500 wheel with this setup. We'll see. If I like, here's the thing. So all I really care about is driving this. Like, if we end up having 400 wheel horsepower instead of 500 wheel horsepower, I won't really care, because I want to drive. Like, it's fun to build the engine and stuff like this and work on a car, but I love driving. I'm building this car so I can drive the shit out of it. Like, that's the thing. I'm building this to be driven, not building this to just have cool numbers on a paper and talk like, oh, I got this fast car. No, I'm gonna be driving it. I don't really care. I have a goal to make 500 wheel horsepower, because you need some kind of direction of where you're going. I was like, okay, let's just say we're gonna make 500 wheel horsepower, because I need a goal to be able to make sure that everything around it works with 500 wheel horsepower. So that's the plan with the 500 wheel. If we make 400 wheel, I don't really care, but the goal is definitely to make 500 wheel horsepower. And if I make like 425 or 435 horsepower on the wheels, I have 500 in the engine, which is still a 500 horsepower car by some standards. So and that's also like 5 times the normal horsepower in this engine. So either way, it will be fun, but it's definitely built to be driven, and it's also a budget build. That's why I've cheapened out on some stuff and trying to use as many stock parts as possible. But they're still really good. Stock parts in the Volvo engines are really good. So yeah, it's what it is. Hopefully it will be all good. And then we have the stock intake for right now. I would love to get a plenum intake for that really good flow, making a lot of power, but this is another thing. This intake is good for like 500 wheel horsepower as well. Don't ask me how this little shitty intake right here can make 500 wheel horsepower, but it can. I've seen a lot of cars do it with the stock intake. Of course, in the future, if I get some more money, I will be getting a plenum intake. But if it works, it works. And that's the most important thing. Like, if it works, it works. Stock fuel rail with the stock fuel pressure regulator. But for injectors, we'll be using this. This is the part of the fuel system that won't be stock. This is Siemens Steka 875cc injectors. I'm pretty sure this won't be enough to make 1500 horsepower. Yeah, that would definitely not be enough. I'm 95% sure that this won't be enough to make 500 wheel horsepower. I bought this when I had a lower horsepower goal, but then I ended up going up to 500 wheel horsepower, so we probably won't be able to use these injectors. I probably need to get some 1500cc injectors, but I have this right now, and I will use them until I can afford some bigger injectors, or someone wants to trade 1500cc injectors for some 875cc injectors. And look at this, this is pretty sick right here. This is a cam gear out of my 940. It actually exploded when I tried to start it once. Bet you've never seen that before. And for ECU, as of right now, I will be using the VAMS V3 right here. This is a VAMS 3.2. It's a really solid ECU. It's really popular with the BMW guys here in Europe. It's a really solid ECU. There's a lot of features and stuff in it, but I don't have the correct harness. This harness right here is for the 940. So maybe I can do some tinkering with that. I have the stock 940 harness, and this is plugs into the 940 harness. So maybe I can do some special stuff and get that working my 240. If not, I'm trying to sell this or trade it for a max ECU, because the max ECU, even though for the money you get a lot more with the VAMS compared to the max ECU, but I really prefer the max ECU software. So even though you have a lot more features, especially you have a NOx sensor in the VAMS, which you don't have in the max ECU until you get up to the race version, which is like 2,000 euros or something like that. So we'll see if I will be using this. As of right now, this is the ECU I have, so I will try to get that to work. If not, I will try to get a max ECU, but we'll see where time goes. So that is for right now. We got the VAMS. We're also running this right here, which is a waste fire ignition coil. So instead of having the normal distributor, we'll be using a electronic distributor, I guess we can call this. So two ignition coils, 2 cylinders per ignition coil, and yeah, super simple, works fine. I don't need a distributor, because on the 940 you have the distributor back here, which doesn't work on the 240 because the firewall is right here. And on the 240 you have the distributor right here, but I didn't feel like putting it here because I want to put a crankcase ventilation right here, and I also had this distributor, or this waste fire ignition coil. So yeah, that's what we're gonna be running. So super simple setup, and nothing too crazy. FK bottom end with H-beam rods, 531 head, ported, cam, valve springs, that's it. And head studs, of course. So super simple setup. Got the truck turbo. We also have a truck intercooler. Might change that out for a 3-inch. So we'll see if I use this one or if I get a 3-inch. As I said, I'm on a budget when I'm trying to build this. This is still pretty expensive to build, even though it's on a budget. Of course, everything is like relative. It's not like building a 2JC engine or something like that, but it's still pretty expensive. And yeah, we'll see how far I can go. But I'm trying to get this to work as good as possible without spending as much money as possible, because I want to spend money on driving the car. And yeah, so hopefully we'll see how far we can get with this. The goal is just to be able to drive it as much as possible. It's gonna be fun to drive this car because it's gonna feel like a proper race car. Big turbo, we're gonna be in the 240, in the bucket seat with the racing steering wheel, with the freaking hydro handbrake. A lot of sounds because it's gonna be straight piped, and not that much interior and stuff, so it's gonna be a really fun car to drive. I'm really excited for it. A big question there, what gearbox I'm running. Like, the most obvious would be to run a BMW ZF transmission. It's really common to have those redone for the Volvo B230 platform. But it's a money question. As I said earlier, I'm not trying to spend too much money building this car, but I know that's a really good investment, getting the BMW transmission. but it's like 1,000 to 1,500 euro investment to getting that. I know it's worth it, but I do have a reinforced M90 in the car right now, which I'm trying to fit up, so maybe we'll start with the reinforced M90, because it's a 5-speed Volvo transmission. It's not the best, but it kind of works if you make sure you always shift properly. But I want to try to find a good deal on a gearbox and a clutch and get it in the car as well, because it would be really nice to have the BMW transmission as well. But maybe we start off with the M90 with a reinforced clutch and keep it simple, see how far we can go, because that is the main part of this car. Try to get it done to summer for a good price, so I can still have money left over to drive the car, because that is the point. I don't want to build a car just to build a car, I want to build a car to drive the car. So we'll see how far I can get, but I'm gonna get this engine assembled, we can get the car set up out there. Super simple setup, but it works. It's the same that everyone else is running pretty much. Try to just keep it simple and make it work and focus on the driving. I don't want the channel to be all about the building, because the building is fun, but the driving is where it's at. That's what I enjoy. That is pretty much it. That is all about the engine. I can get this assembled and get everything done for the car with the harness, the fuel system and everything like that. And then in the next video, maybe we'll be able to start it up and test drive it for the first time ever. We'll see what I do, but yeah, that's pretty much the plan. Maybe I keep that engine in the car for a bit, drive it, and get it inspected, and then throw this engine in there. We'll see what happens, but make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that, because I will be driving this car and I will be making a lot of videos with it. And I also make some videos of like Swedish street racing and stuff like that, because you know that's crazy. We Swedes do it different with street racing and drifting and everything like that. So if you like that kind of stuff, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.